Hello and welcome to Historical World of English, where you'll find the most recent news, entertaining moments, and behind-the-scenes accounts you won't want to miss. The free encyclopedia American History redirects here from Wikipedia. See History of the Americas for information on the history of the continents. Native Americans occupied the land that is now the United States for tens of thousands of years. There are 574 federally recognized tribes among their descendants. The first settlers from the Kingdom of England established Jamestown in modern-day Virginia in 1607, and English pilgrims landed on the Mayflower in 1620 on their way to Plymouth. Both events marked the beginning of the history of the modern-day United States. European colonization began at the end of the 15th century and largely decimated indigenous societies through wars and epidemics. The 13 colonies, which at the time belonged to British America and, by extension, the Kingdom of Great Britain, were established in the 1760s. The southern colonies built an agricultural system on slave labor and enslaving millions from Africa. In 1773, following the British victory over the Kingdom of France in the French and Indian Wars, Parliament passed the Intolerable Acts, which were meant to end self-governance and a number of taxes on the colonies. Tensions between the colonies and British authorities subsequently intensified, leading to the Revolutionary War, which commenced with the battles of Lexington and Concord on April 19, 1775. In June 1775, the Second Continental Congress established the Continental Army and unanimously selected George Washington as its commander-in-chief. The Declaration of Independence was signed by all members of the Second Continental Congress on July 4, 1776, a year later. The British acknowledged the independence and sovereignty of the 13 colonies in the Treaty of Paris on September 3, 1783, which led to the establishment of the United States. On September 17, 1787, the U.S. Constitution was ratified by the 13 colonies and signed by a majority of the delegates, establishing the first modern U.S. government. Washington was elected as the nation's first president in the 1788-89 presidential election. Along with Alexander Hamilton, his Treasury Secretary, Washington wanted to establish a central government that was somewhat stronger than the one that other founders, like Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, wanted. The new nation debated, adopted, and ratified the United States on March 4, 1789 Constitution, which is currently the world's oldest written and codified national constitution. 1. In order to guarantee inalienable rights, a Bill of Rights was included in 1791. In 1803, Jefferson, then serving as the nation's third president, negotiated the Louisiana Purchase, which doubled the size of the country. The country expanded westward as part of a project of settler colonialism that was marked by a series of conflicts with the indigenous people who lived on the continent. This expansion was encouraged by the availability of cheap land and the idea of manifest destiny. President James K. Polk was probably the most prominent proponent of manifest destiny. Polk, who annexed Texas in 1845 and declared war on Mexico the next year. The Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, signed in 1848, saw the United States take over a significant portion of the American Southwest from Mexico following an overwhelming victory for the United States in the Mexican-American War. Whether or not slavery should be legal in the expanded territories was an issue of national contention and led to increasing tensions over slavery.
Following the election of Abraham Lincoln as the nation's 16th president in the 1860 presidential election, Southern states seceded and formed the pro-slavery Confederate States of America. In April 1861, at the Battle of Fort Sumter, Confederates launched the Civil War. But the Union's victory at the Battle of Gettysburg, which was the deadliest battle in American military history with over 50,000 casualties, proved to be a turning point in the war and led to the Union's victory in 1865, which saved the nation. Lincoln was shot dead on April 15, 1865. Slavery was abolished as a result of the defeat of the Confederates. From 1865 to 1877, during the subsequent Reconstruction era, the national government was explicitly tasked with safeguarding individual rights. White Southern Democrats regained political power in the South in 1877, frequently sustaining white supremacy through paramilitary voter suppression and Jim Crow laws. During the Gilded Age, from the white 19th century to the early 20th century, the United States emerged as the world's leading industrial power, largely due to entrepreneurship, industrialization, and the arrival of millions of immigrant workers. The progressive movement was sparked by dissatisfaction with traditional politics, corruption, and inefficiency, which resulted in reforms like the federal income tax and direct presidential election, senators, citizenship for many indigenous people, alcohol prohibition, and women's suffrage. The United States joined the successful Allies in declaring war on Germany in 1917 after initially remaining neutral during World War I. The Wall Street crash of 1929 marked the beginning of a 10-year-long global Great Depression following the prosperous Roaring Twenties. President Franklin D. Roosevelt launched New Deal programs, including unemployment relief and Social Security. In 1941, after the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, the United States entered World War II, aiding in the defeat of the Axis powers, Nazi Germany and Fascist Italy in the European theater, and Imperial Japan in the Pacific War, and Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945, when the Japanese used nuclear weapons. The war resulted in the Allied occupation of Germany and Japan, both led by the United States until 1952. The United States of America and the Soviet Union emerged as superpower rivals after World War II ended and the Cold War began. The arms race, the space race, propaganda campaigns, and proxy wars, such as the Korean War and the Vietnam War, largely pitted the two nations against one another indirectly. Social reforms in the 1960s enforced African Americans' constitutional rights to vote and freedom of movement, largely as a result of the Civil Rights Movement. In 1991, at the Gulf War, the United States led a coalition and invaded Iraq. The Soviet Union broke up later that year, ending the Cold War and making the United States the only superpower in the world. In the post-Cold War era, the United States has been drawn into conflicts in the Middle East, especially following the September 11th attacks, with the start of the War on Terror. In the 21st century, the country was negatively impacted by the Great Recession of 2007 to 2009 and the COVID-19 pandemic of 2020 to 2023. Recently, the U.S. withdrew from the war in Afghanistan, intervened in the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and became militarily involved in the Middle Eastern crisis, which included the Red Sea crisis, a military conflict between the U.S. and the Houthi movement in Yemen, and both the 2025 and 2026 strikes in Iran during the Iran-Israel war.